Margaret Yvonne Middleton, September 1, 1922 to January 8, 2007, known professionally as Yvonne De Carlo, was a Canadian-American actress, dancer and singer. She became a Hollywood film star in the 1940s and 1950s, made several recordings, and later acted on television and stage. De Carlo was born in Vancouver, British Columbia and was enrolled in a local dance school by her mother when she was 3. By the early 1940s, she and her mother had moved to Los Angeles, where De Carlo entered beauty contests and worked as a dancer in nightclubs. In 1942, she signed a 3-year contract with Paramount Pictures, where she got uncredited bit parts in important films. Her first lead was for producer E.B. Dare in the 1943 James Fenimore Cooper adventure Deerslayer. She obtained her breakthrough role in Salome, where she danced, 1945. A Universal Pictures release produced by Walter Wanger, who described her as the most beautiful girl in the world. The film's publicity and success turned her into a star, and she signed a 5-year contract with Universal. Universal starred her in its lavish Technicolor productions, such as Frontier Gal, 1945, Song of Scheherazade, 1947, and Slave Girl, 1947. Cameramen voted her Queen of Technicolor 3 years in a row. Tired of being typecast as exotic women, she made her first serious dramatic performances in 2 film noirs, Brute Force, 1947, and Criss Cross, 1949. The first American film star to visit Israel. De Carlo received further recognition as an actress for her leading performances in the British comedies Hotel Sahara, 1951, The Captain's Paradise, 1953, and Happy Ever After, 1954. Her career reached its peak when eminent producer-director Cecil B. DeMille cast her as Moses' Midianite wife, Sephora, in his biblical epic The Ten Commandments, 1956. For this role, she won a Laurel Award for Top-Liner Supporting Actress. 6. Her success continued with other notable starring roles in Flame of the Islands, 1956, Death of a Scoundrel, 1956, Band of Angels, 1957, and The Sword and the Cross, 1958, in which she portrayed Mary Magdalene. She starred in the CBS sitcom The Munsters, 1964 to 1966, playing Herman Munster's glamorous ghoulish wife, Lily, a role she reprised in the feature film Munster, Go Home, 1966, and the TV film The Munster's Revenge, 1981. In 1971, she played Carlotta Campion and introduced the popular song, I'm Still Here, in the Broadway production of the Stephen Sondheim musical Follies. Yvonne, her best-selling autobiography, was published in 1987. A stroke survivor, De Carlo died of heart failure in 2007. She was awarded 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for her contributions to motion pictures and television. De Carlo was born Margaret Yvonne Cow Middleton on September 1, 1922, at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Her nickname was Peggy. because she was named after the silent film star Baby Peggy. Her mother, Marie De Carlo, was born in France to a Sicilian father and a Scottish mother. Marie, a wayward and rebellious teenager, aspired to become a dancer and worked as a milliner's apprentice until she met Peggy's father, William Shelto Middleton. Middleton was a salesman born in New Zealand to English parents and had piercing eyes of pale blue and a wealth of straight black hair. Marie and William married in Alberta, where they lived for a couple of months before returning to Vancouver. They moved in with Marie's parents, but the marriage was troubled. Peggy had only 2 memories of her father: climbing up to his knee and crawling toward his feet. By the time Peggy was 3, William was involved in various swindles and fled Canada aboard a schooner, promising to send for his wife and child. Marie and Peggy never heard from him again. Rumors said that he remarried twice and had more children, worked as an actor in silent films, or died aboard a ship. Peggy later wrote, "My own assumption is that he died before he had the chance to discover that his baby Peggy had become a Hollywood actress, or I think he would have tried to contact me." After William's departure, Marie left her parents' home and found work in a shop. Marie and Peggy lived in a succession of apartments in Vancouver, including one with no furniture or stove. They periodically returned to the De Carlo home, a huge white frame house, at 1728 Comox Street in Vancouver's West End. Marie's parents, Michelle, Papa De Carlo, and Margaret Purvis De Carlo, were religious, attended church regularly, and held services in their parlor. Michelle, a native of Messina, had met Margaret in Nice, France. They married in 1897, had 4 children, and settled in Canada. De Carlo attended Lord Roberts Elementary School, a block from her grandparents' home. Citation needed. She originally wanted to be a writer. She was 7 when a school assignment, a poem she wrote titled, "A Little Boy," was entered in a contest run by the Vancouver Sun. She won and received a prize of $5, which, according to De Carlo, meant as much to her at that time as if she had won the Nobel Peace Prize. She also wrote short plays, which she usually staged in her grandparents' house, and even adapted Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol for a neighborhood performance. Marie wanted her daughter to have a career in show business and made sure Peggy received singing and dancing lessons. Peggy joined the choir of St. Paul's Anglican Church to strengthen her voice. When she was 10, or 3, according to a 1982 interview, her mother enrolled her in the June Roper School of the Dance in Vancouver. In May 1939, a Variety news item listed Yvonne De Carlo as one of the performers at the opening of High Singer's Palomar Ballroom, also known as Palomar Supper Club, in Vancouver. De Carlo and her mother made several trips to Los Angeles. In 1940, she won second place in the Miss Venice Beauty Contest, and placed 5th in that year's Miss California competition, and can be seen in that pageant at 036 of the British Pathé film, A Matter of Figures. At the Miss Venice contest, she was noticed by a booking agent who told her to audition for an opening in the chorus line at the Earl Carroll Theatre on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. De Carlo and her mother arrived at Earl Carroll's for the audition, but after learning that Carol would have to examine her upper assets before hiring her, De Carlo and her mother searched for work at another popular Hollywood nightclub, the Florentine Gardens. They met the proprietor, Nils Granlund, and he introduced De Carlo to the audience before she tap danced to Tea for Two. Granlund then asked, "Well, folks, is she in or out?" The audience responded with a rousing round of applause, with whistles and cheers, and De Carlo got the job. She started in the back of the chorus line, but after months of practice and hard work, Granlund featured her in a King Kong number. In it, she danced and cast off several chiffon veils before being carried away by a gorilla. She was given more solo routines. She had been dancing at the Florentine Gardens only a few months when she was arrested by immigration officials and deported to Canada in late 1940. In January 1941, Granlund sent a telegram to immigration officials pledging his sponsorship of De Carlo in the U.S., and affirmed his offer of steady employment, both requirements to re-enter the country. In May 1941, she appeared in a revue, Hollywood Revels, at the Orpheum Theater. A critic from the Los Angeles Times who reviewed it said the dancing of Yvonne De Carlo is especially notable. She also made her debut on network radio with Edmund Lowe and Victor McLaglen, who were performing extracts from a series based on their Flag Quirt performances. De Carlo wanted to act, at the encouragement of her friend Artie Shaw, who offered to pay her wages for a month. She quit the Florentine Gardens and hired talent agent Jack Pomeroy. Pomeroy got De Carlo an uncredited role as a bathing beauty in a Columbia Pictures B film, Harvard. Here I Come, 1941. She had one line, "Nowadays a girl must show a front," in a scene with the film's star, ex-boxer Maxie Rosenblum. Her salary was $25 and her work got her into the Screen Actors Guild. While at Columbia, she was featured in a two-reel collegiate comedy, The Kink of the Campus, 1941. She also starred in The Lamp of Memory, 1942. A 3-minute musical film designed to be shown in coin-operated, Soundies movie jukeboxes. When no other acting jobs came her way, she decided to return to the chorus line and auditioned for Earl Carroll, who hired her. While working for Carroll, she won a one-line part in This Gun for Hire, 1942, at Paramount. Carroll found out and fired her, as he did not allow his dancers to work outside the nightclub without permission. 42. She asked Granlund if he would rehire her, and he did. In December 1941, she was dancing in the Glamour Over Hollywood revue at the Gardens. America's entry into World War II saw De Carlo and other Florentine dancers busy entertaining troops at USO shows. A skilled horsewoman, she also appeared in a number of West Coast rodeos. Following an interview at Paramount, De Carlo was cast as one of Dorothy Lamour's handmaidens in Road to Morocco, 1942. She got a screen test for the role of Eta in The Moon and Sixpence, but lost to Elena Verdugo. She returned to Paramount for a bit role in Lucky Jordan, 1942, and found another small part in a Republic Pictures film, Youth on Parade, 1942. which she later called a dreadful bomb. After recovering from bronchial pneumonia, she went to Paramount and signed a 6-month contract, possibly going up to 7 years, starting at $60 a week. For her first assignment as a Paramount player, De Carlo was loaned to Monogram Pictures to play a Florentine Gardens dancer in Rhythm Parade, starring Nils Granlund, who had requested her for the role, and Gail Storm. She then appeared as an extra in Paramount's The Crystal Ball, 1943, of which she wrote, "Only my left shoulder survived after editing." She asked director Sam Wood for a part in his next film, For Whom the Bell Tolls, 1943. And he gave her a small role in the cantina scene with Gary Cooper. De Carlo was also seen in Let's Face It, 1943, So Proudly We Hail, 1943, and Salute for Three, 1943. She kept busy in small roles and helping other actors shoot tests. "I was the test queen at Paramount," she said later. But she was ambitious and wanted more. "I'm not going to be just one of the girls," she said. Cecil B. DeMille, Paramount's most famous director, saw De Carlo in So Proudly We Hail, and arranged for a screen test and interview for a part in his film, The Story of Dr. Wassel, 1943. He subsequently selected her for a key role. He ended up choosing Carol Thurston for the role of Tremartini and casting De Carlo in an uncredited part as a native girl, but promised her another role in a future film. Shortly after losing the Tremartini role, De Carlo was loaned to Republic Pictures to portray Native American Princess Wata in Deerslayer. It was her first featured role in a full-length film. At Paramount, she played unbilled bit roles in True to Life, 1943, and Standing Room Only, 1944. She also tested for the role of Lola in Double Indemnity, 1944. She was billed in a short, Fun Time, 1944, and went to MGM to play an uncredited lady in Waiting in Kismet, 1944. The New York Times later dubbed De Carlo, Threat Girl, for Dorothy Lamer, when Dottie wanted to break away from Sarongjing. This had its origin when De Carlo was set to replace Dorothy Lamer in Rainbow Island, 1944. However, Lamer changed her mind about the role. De Carlo was given a bit part in the final movie. De Carlo played further unbilled roles in Here Come the Waves, 1944, Practically Yours, 1944, and Bring On the Girls, 1945. Paramount decided not to renew her contract option, but did renew Lamer's contract. In September 1954, producer-director Cecil B. DeMille cast her as Sephora, the wife of Moses, played by Charlton Heston, in his biblical epic The Ten Commandments, a Paramount Pictures production that premiered in November 1956. In his autobiography, DeMille explained he decided to cast De Carlo as Moses's wife after his casting director, Burt McKay, called his attention to one scene she played in Sombrero. Even though the film was a picture far removed in theme from the Ten Commandments, wrote DeMille, I sensed in her a depth, an emotional power, a womanly strength which the part of Sephora needed and which she gave it. She prepared extensively for the role, taking weaving lessons at the University of California, Los Angeles, and shepherding lessons in the San Fernando Valley. Months before filming began, she had worked on the part with a drama coach. Her scenes were shot on Paramount's sound stages in 1955. Her performance received praise from critics. Crowther, the New York Times critic, was impressed. Yvonne De Carlo as the Midianite shepherdess to whom Moses is wed is notably good in a severe role. The Hollywood Reporter wrote that she is very fine as the simple Sephora, and the New York Daily News noticed that she plays the wife of Moses with conviction. De Carlo was expected to receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, but she preferred to be listed as a leading actress on the voting ballot, and was not nominated in that category. However, she won a Laurel Award for Top Liner Supporting Actress for her performance in the film. She fell in love with stuntman Bob Morgan while visiting the filming of the Ten Commandments in Egypt in 1954. They married in 1955, and their first son, Bruce, was born in 1956. DeMille became Bruce's godfather. Her second pregnancy meant she had to turn down the role of the female pirate DeMille had given her in his next production, The Buccaneer, 1958. It was announced she would team with Vittorio De Sica in an adaptation of The Baker's Wife to be shot in English and Italian, but the film was never made. Neither were two projects De Carlo was meant to make in Italy following Raw Edge, The Mistress of Lebanon Castle with Trevor Howard and Honeymoon in Italy. Instead, De Carlo co-starred with George Sanders and Zsa Zsa Gabor in Death of a Scoundrel, 1956. The New York Times commended her performance as Bridget Kelly. Yvonne De Carlo does a solid and professional job as the adoring petty thief who rises to eminence with him, Sanders' character. On the small screen she was in skits and sketches for Shower of Stars, 1957. She was also in Schlitz Playhouse, 1957. De Carlo released an LP record of standards called Yvonne De Carlo Sings on Masterseal Records, a subsidiary label of Remington Records, in 1957. Orchestrated by future film composer John Williams under the pseudonym John Towner, the album contains 10 tracks: End of a Love Affair, In the Blue of Evening, I Got It Bad, and That Ain't Good, Am I Blue, Little Girl Blue, Blue Moon, But Not For Me, My Blue Heaven, Mood Indigo, One for My Baby, and One More for the Road. As a result of the great success and positive reviews of the Ten Commandments, De Carlo was offered lead roles in 2 Warner Bros. Films that would be shot at the same time. The Helen Morgan Story and Band of Angels, based on Robert Penn Warren's novel. De Carlo chose the latter because her co-star would be Clark Gable, one of her favorite actors. The title refers to the short life expectancy of the black soldiers who fought with the Union troops in the Civil War, but the story is mainly about Amantha Manti Starr, a mixed-race Southern belle who is sold as a slave after her father's death, and discovers that her deceased mother was a black slave on her father's plantation. Amantha is then taken to New Orleans where she is bought by plantation owner Hamish Bond Gable, who falls in love with her. The film was both a critical and financial disappointment at the time of release. De Carlo was in Verdict of Three for Playhouse 90, 1958. She made a French Foreign Legion movie with Victor Mature. Timbuktu, directed by Jacques Tourneur, 1958. She unsuccessfully auditioned for the Broadway musical Destry Rides Again, losing out to Dolores Gray. In May 1958, De Carlo was signed to play Mary Magdalene in the Italian biblical epic The Sword and the Cross, tentatively titled The Great Sinner and released in the United States as Mary Magdalene. With Jorge Mistral as her love interest, the Roman Gaius Marcellus, and Rossana Podesta as her sister, Martha. The film's director, Carlo Ludovico Bragaglia, later remembered that producer Ottavio Poggi had sent the provisional script to America, so Yvonne De Carlo could read it and decide on her participation in the film. She read it and got very excited, agreeing to play the role of Magdalene. The film was shot in English and later dubbed in Italian. De Carlo put together a nightclub act and toured with it in South America. She guest-starred on Bonanza, A Rose for Lotta, 1959, Adventures in Paradise, Isle of Eden, 1960, Death Valley Days, The Lady Was an MD, 1961, Follow the Sun, The Longest Crap Game in History, 1961, and Annie Beeler's Place, 1962, and Burke's Law, Who Killed Bo Sparrow, 1963. She also played Destry Rides Again in Summer Stock. De Carlo's husband had become permanently disabled while working as a stuntman on How the West Was Won, 1963, eventually losing his leg. De Carlo took any job going, appearing in nightclub acts across the country as well as a play in stock, third best sport. To help out, John Wayne offered her the supporting role of Louise Warren, the title character's cook in McLintock, 1963, with Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. She was second billed in A Western Law of the Lawless, 1964, and played the Spanish dancer Dolores in the Bob Hope comedy A Global Affair, 1964. De Carlo was in The Night the Monkey Died for The Greatest Show on Earth, 1964. She took over a role on Enter Laughing on Broadway for a week, and played in it when the production went on tour. De Carlo, a naturalized citizen of the United States, was an active Republican who campaigned for Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Gerald Ford. In her autobiography, she recounted the time when she loved to give interviews, and enjoyed being outspoken, or good copy, openly discussing my survival instincts and admitting my to the right of right politics. A conservative, she stated in a 1976 television interview with the CBC. I'm all for men and I think they ought to stay up there and be the bosses, and have women wait on them hand and foot and put their slippers on and hand them the pipe and serve 7-course meals. As long as they open the door, support the woman, and do their duty in the bedroom, etc. De Carlo's maternal grandparents came from distinct religious backgrounds. He was Catholic and she was Presbyterian. They raised her as an Anglican. She was a member and chorister of Vancouver's St. Paul's Anglican Church. In her autobiography, De Carlo wrote about her faith in God. God has saved me and mine from some pretty sticky situations. For me, religion is a little like being a Republican or a Democrat. It's not the party that counts, it's the man. Therefore, I care not what house of worship I enter, be it Catholic, Presbyterian, or Baptist. I elected God a long time ago and I'll stick with him, because I don't think his term will ever be up. De Carlo suffered a minor stroke in 1998. She later became a resident of the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, where she spent her last years. She died from heart failure on January 8, 2007, and was cremated.